For centuries, the Dead Sea Scrolls remained hidden, sealed in clay jars, buried in desert silence. Their discovery wasn't just archaeological, it was spiritual. These ancient texts, written by mystics who sought truth in isolation, whisper forgotten knowledge about the soul's true origin and its return. Modern eyes read them as historical artifacts. But deeper readers know better. These scrolls speak of a journey not just through time, but through consciousness, a path of descent into matter and struggle, followed by a return to light. They do not offer commandments. They reveal maps, not maps of geography, but of the soul. They describe how the soul loses its way, forgets itself, fragments, and how, through inner alignment and remembrance, it can begin to gather itself once more. This is not dogma. This is decoding, and what's being decoded is you. The authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls lived outside society, not out of fear, but purpose. They believed the world had fallen into forgetting, not just forgetting the divine, but forgetting the self. In their solitude, they studied ancient codes, observed the stars, purified their minds, waiting for what they called the return of the light. To them, life was not random. It was a mirror. Every suffering, every confusion, every injustice was the soul's reflection distorted by disconnection. They taught that healing does not begin by fixing the world. It begins by remembering who you are. They saw the soul's descent into matter as part of a greater cycle, not as punishment, but as initiation. Earth was not exile, it was the proving ground, and only through descent could true return happen. These weren't just beliefs, they were instructions left behind by those who had walked that path before. The scrolls speak in symbols, layers of meaning wrapped in metaphor. When they describe light, they don't just mean sunlight. They mean clarity, consciousness, divine remembrance. And when they speak of darkness, they don't mean evil. They mean confusion, separation, amnesia of the soul. This language wasn't meant for the surface mind. It was encoded, designed to awaken something ancient within you. That's why so much of the world dismissed the scrolls as mysticism or myth. Because what they really threatened wasn't religion, it was control. The journey described in the scrolls isn't a physical path. It's an inward spiral, a process of burning away what is false to reveal what is eternal. The return to the light was never about escaping the world. It was about returning to the clarity beneath the illusion of it. These writings are not decoration, they're ignition. If something ancient in you just stirred, subscribe and ring the bell. This is only the beginning. One of the scrolls speaks of the Watchers, beings who once guided humanity but fell from alignment. It speaks not as myth, but as memory. The ancients did not write fiction. They preserved echoes of a deeper reality, events that happened not in our physical timeline, but in consciousness. According to these texts, the soul didn't simply emerge. It descended, willingly. It chose density, chose forgetting, not as failure, but as initiation, a divine risk taken to remember itself through contrast, to rediscover light by walking through shadow. And yet, the texts also warn, the longer the soul remains asleep, the more it identifies with the illusion. The dream becomes home, the pain becomes identity. That's why awakening isn't always gentle. It tears, it shakes, it removes everything that is false, no matter how familiar it's become. In this tearing, something real is reborn. And that is what the scrolls truly point to, not doctrine, but transformation. The Dead Sea Scrolls never hand you answers. They provoke questions, questions that destabilize everything you thought was solid. They point not to salvation through belief, but transformation through experience. To walk the path, you must be willing to be emptied. The soul cannot be filled with truth if it is full of certainty. One scroll speaks of the path of fire, not as punishment, but as purification. Fire that burns illusions, that refines the will, that scorches every false identity until what remains is indestructible. They taught that the divine is not found in escape from the world, but immersion into it with awakened eyes. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every loss becomes initiation material, each pain a riddle, each wound a doorway. The soul's journey, then, is not linear. It spirals, collapses, rises, forgets, and remembers. And in every fall, a deeper truth waits to be uncovered. This, the scrolls insist, is the only way the soul remembers its origin, not by fleeing darkness, but by illuminating it. In the silence between their lines, the scrolls seem to ask, what if your suffering isn't a detour, but the path itself? What if the soul learns not by avoiding fire, but by walking through it, eyes open, heart raw? The writers did not call for escape. They called for remembrance. To see the divine not in some distant realm, but in breath, in failure, in shadow. They saw the soul's descent not as a fall from grace, but as an opportunity to embody it. To them, awakening wasn't a moment. It was a rhythm, a slow peeling back of illusion, a cycle of forgetting and remembering over and over like tides. They wrote in spirals because truth to them was never linear. It arrived through symbols, patterns, resonance. This is why their words still vibrate across centuries, because they were never meant just to be read. They were meant to be lived, unfolded in you as memory returns, as fire refines, as the soul slowly recognizes itself again. The soul, they said, forgets not just its source, but its power. In the density of matter, it begins to believe in separation. It learns to identify with pain, with name, with form. But beneath those layers, the original essence waits, not destroyed, only dormant. The scrolls speak of a seal placed over the heart, a veil that can only be lifted through inner fire. Not intellectual knowledge, not memorization, but lived truth. Pain is not the enemy, they wrote. Numbness is. Disconnection is. For it is through pain that the soul calls itself back. They offered no savior, no shortcut, only the path. And the path was inward, through silence, through surrender, through shadow. Each moment of honesty, each breath of presence was another step toward unveiling the light hidden within. This is why their teachings were dangerous, because they did not teach people to obey. They taught people to remember, and a remembered soul cannot be ruled. The Dead Sea Scrolls do not offer comfort. They offer clarity. They remind us that awakening is not an escape from the world, but a full return to it, with new eyes, new breath, new responsibility. The soul's journey, they whisper, was never about perfection. It was about remembering wholeness in the middle of fragmentation, finding divinity not above, but within, and realizing that the exile we feel is not cosmic punishment, it's spiritual amnesia. So what do the scrolls reveal? Not a fixed doctrine, but a mirror that shows you what you've forgotten, a mirror that dares you to go deeper, to ask again, to remember not just where you come from, but who you truly are. You were never lost. You were only sleeping. And now, it's time to wake up. If the scrolls were written to awaken you, why do you still feel asleep?